If you would like to support the podcast and get some extra content while you're there, head on over to patreon.com/SevereMMA podcast and sign up. From the rewatch to the Q&A, we will have loads of content every week. So sign up, patreon.com/SevereMMA podcast. Welcome everybody. It's episode 390. I had to look at my notes for that one, of the Severe MMA podcast. My name is Sean Sheehan, aka the Pod God, coming to you from the home of hurling, Limerick, and I am joined today, you can probably guess by that intro, by Ian O'Neill. Graham did a Derek Lewis on us. He pulled out about an hour before recording 6, so get well soon, Graham. But Ian O'Neill joins me today from beautiful, the home of Association Football Canada, to talk a little bit about the world of mixed martial arts. Ian,
we're getting all geared up for the World Cup over here.
And we've World Cup preview, patreon.com/SevereMMA podcast. Check that out. But before we get into all of that, before we get into all of the mixed martial arts, we must tell you that this beautiful episode of the podcast is brought to you by our friends over at Manscaped. And it's never too early to play the holiday music. It's never too early to start thinking about gifts, whether it's for your friend or your friend in your pants. You can make this season jolly with Manscaped. Do your little drummer boy a favour, that's what they say, and use the Lawnmower 4.0 to avoid another silent night in the bedroom. Then add in Manscaped's top of the line shower. Myself and Graham usually don't have our cameras on, but I'm just looking at Ian hilariously laughing at my Manscaped. It's great. It makes it so much
an R-rated read here, as they say.
An outrageous read. Add Manscaped's top of the line shower products as well, and it'll say, all I want for Christmas is you. Santa cares about his sack, and so should you. Looks nice when you get naughty. And go to manscaped.com and use the promo code SevereMMA for 20% off and free shipping. Absolutely screwed up most of that read, but sure, look, you know what to do anyway. Manscaped's Platinum Package 4.0 is a one-stop shop for the man who deserves it all. It is everything needed to help you deck the halls from face to balls just in time for mistletoe season. It is all the stuff you know in the performance package, plus ultra premium body wash, ultra premium 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner, ultra premium deodorant, which will get you smelling absolutely lovely from your Santy hat to your candy cane. Lawnmower 4.0 body trimmer and the weed whacker nose and hair trimmer feature proprietary advanced skin safe technology to protect your delicate presence. Oh Jesus. Plus both are waterproof, so you can use them in the shower or whatever, but don't get all your pubes all over the shower. That's absolutely disgusting. Please don't do that. There's also a 4000K LED light, so it can light the way for Rudolph as well. Now you've groomed your candy cane, let's make sure you don't smell like a reindeer with the Platinum Package shower products, which I just mentioned there. Sulfate-free, vegan, and made to have your skin feeling hydrated and smelling fresh. But smelling doesn't stop at the shower. My personal favourites: Crop Preserver, Crop Reviver Ball Toner, can solve that stank. Keep them problems away all day. Once you touch your sack, you'll never go back. That's, yeah. The Performance Package 4.0 should be sitting under your tree this holiday season. It's the perfect stocking stuffer. Jesus Christ, how much are people spending these days? It's a perfect present, I think. And the brand new Body Buffer, is the perfect stocking stuffer. I read too quickly there. An incredible body scrubber that makes, I want one of them. Ian, get me one of them for Christmas. And it's better than loofah. So use the promo code SevereMMA for 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com using the promo code SevereMMA. Manscaped, get your balls ready for the holidays. Right, let's get straight into it now. We had a metric ton of mixed martial arts this weekend. I remember thinking at one stage that the UFC card was the 5th best MMA card this weekend, and then you said to me just before this, the Cage Warriors was 2 cards, so you could definitely argue it was the 6th best MMA card this weekend. And that just tells you, look, it probably tells you, and you could argue 7 as well, because I'm forgetting Invicta, because we're going to talk about that as well in a minute. There was a lot of MMA on this weekend. Maybe not a lot of great MMA, but there was loads of MMA. Next week we're coming up, as you told me as well before we start, next week is Thanksgiving over in the States, so there isn't much MMA, but we have a massive PFL card next week, which we'll be talking about in a while. But which do you prefer? Do you prefer the one great card like the PFL one is next week, you can concentrate on it, or do you like, I sat down on Friday to watch MMA and it feels like I've been sitting in the couch since, and it's nearly 12 o'clock on Sunday night now. Which do you prefer?
It's a kind of a mixed bag of what I got this weekend, because there was fights starting at 4:00 in the morning over here, and I was like, there's no way I was going to be getting up to watch
poor Ian.
Yeah, shut up. I knew you were going to say it, but I think, obviously losing the main event on the UFC card was a huge blow to that card, and I might have had maybe less of a tolerance to watch that card, considering I watched one championship in Bellator at pretty much the same time on Friday night as well. But a lot of fights on, and I kind of agree with you. The UFC card this weekend was probably lower on the totem pole when it came to a couple of good fights and good storylines coming out of it. But overall, it didn't really mean too much. If you didn't watch it, you didn't miss a whole lot either. And I think that's just the product of UFC Fight Night cards lately.
When you have to fly to Canada as well to watch some of the cards, it's
pretty not too jet lagged.
I'm okay, I'll survive it. I was in Canada watching one card and in Ireland watching another card at the exact same time. I don't know how I did that. Absolutely. Shout out ExpressVPN.
You need to get them to sponsor this podcast.
ExpressVPN, if you're listening, I nearly do. This is a free ad. I know you're so good. You're absolutely brilliant. It's the best ever. But yeah, like, I don't like two cards at the same time because I can't watch two fights at the same time. Just the way I watch fights, where like I'm watching it from a judging perspective, an analytical perspective, and I suppose a storyline perspective all at the one time. And to try to do that to two fights at the same time is nigh on impossible. And as well, this week for the one championship cards, I was doing the reviews for Sherdog, so I had to take notes. So it was absolutely crazy. And then I'm watching fucking kickboxing matches as well. I'm like, what's going on here? I'd know whether I'm coming or going. But look,
even a grappling match broke out in between, so that did on one championship. So it was crazy,
he lasted 42 seconds or something. That was pretty good. That Danielle Kelly, she's good.
Yeah, she's very, very good. Very, very good. It was pretty much over after basically 30 seconds once she got her back and had a lot of time to work. But yeah, indeed.
Let's start with Bellator, because that was probably the biggest card of the weekend. I would say Bellator 288. It had two big title fights. It had the $1 million briefcase on the line in the main event as well. The undercard, I wouldn't say there was loads on the undercard. A lot of the up and comers in Bellator won. All the prospects, Lloyd Anderson, Jordan Newman, Sullivan Cawley that guy looks an absolute fucking beast. If you don't know him, you should get to know him. Archie Colgan again won his fight. Kilis Mata won. Eliev won to go 9-0. Now Feraldo did lose. We were talking about it on one of the shows this week. I think maybe on the Chasing Back even, over on patreon.com/SevereMMA podcast, where myself and Ian look at all of the non-UFC MMA every couple of weeks. But we did mention Coachelli was an upkick, I suppose, in opponents. And I saw a few people talking about the matchmaking in Bellator and how it's like can legitimate fighter, and it's too much of a jump to go from that to that, and for Feraldo, I don't know if you watched that fight intently or not, but it was one of those ones I was looking at it, and when we talked about Feraldo in the past, now we haven't done loads of analysis, I suppose, on him, but I've done a few post shows and watched probably how many fights he's had in Bellator. He's gotten a lot of, flying knee knockouts, big one-shot movement, a very, very good fighter, but there's a process you're going to have to go through if you're that fighter and you reach the top level. There's no way you can keep fighting like that. There's no way you can keep knocking lads out with flying knees. It's just not going to happen. He goes in there against someone like Coachelli, who can wrestle, who can box, who can fight in all different areas. He can't get the big knockout. The tiredness comes, and then you have a lad who's, 13 fights deep, 4 or 5 fights ahead of you in his career, and he's just able to do that bit extra. He's able to wrestle when he gets tired, or do a certain movement when he gets tired, and get out of certain positions in certain ways. And that hadn't happened in any previous fights. The guys were kind of just there to lose. I think a guy like Feraldo is still a prospect. We obviously watch lots of prospects, in Ireland and stuff, and we see this happening the odd time. You saw it maybe even happen with Paul Hughes. Lost the fight to Vucinic, came back, beat him, beat the brakes off him in the next fight, although that was obviously a very, very close fight. But for Feraldo, I still have a lot of high hopes for him, but the kind of the movement of him as a prospect in this one didn't go great.
Yeah, I think he learned a few things on Friday night. I think Joe Kelly fought a very good fight. He closed the distance, initiated clinching the grappling, and that's important to do against a guy like Feraldo, who's looking to kind of separate and fight on the outside, land those big knees and other shots that he likes to do. But that's it. He found out, that's a style that can beat him now. He's going to have to go back to the drawing board. He's going to have to kind of correct those mistakes. And, that was the first time he was outside of round 2. All of his other fights have finishes. So sometimes, unfortunately, you have to experience those losses. And it was his first shot on the main card and he faltered. But you know what? He'll come back. He'll learn from it. And I'm still excited to see him again and what he brings to the table.
He fucked around and he found out is what exactly
absolutely
happened there.
It'll be common theme in this podcast.
Indeed, 100%. Tyrell Fortune did the exact same thing, lost to Daniel James. I remember his last fight, I gave Raheem Cleveland to beat him. I saw this coming, I really did, but Daniel James, the blistering Welsh winger, comes in and wins that one. Good performance by him and a solid TKO with the elbows in that one. Timur Kisriev looked very, very good, beating Daniel Weichel, 12-0 now, moves through in that 145-pound division in the top 2 fights. Usman Nurmagomedov defeating Patricky Pitbull and Vadim Nimkov defeating Corey Anderson. 2 unanimous decisions, 2 titles. One defended and one won. Firstly, on Usman, look, maybe on both of them first. Bellator has been in a real stinky run, I would say. It's just, now these were 2 good fights. The Queally and Vincent Henderson fight was a good fight. The Storley and MVP fight was a good fight. There's lots of good fights, but they just don't seem to be delivering at the moment. They just don't, like, you pick out maybe, I don't know, we could go through them I suppose, but you could pick out probably the last 10 Bellator big fights and you'd say probably 9 of them have been kind of, not stinkers is the wrong word, but we haven't had like fight of the year. We haven't had even nearly fight of the night in some of them. I don't know what it is. I mean, do you know what it is? It's just bad luck really for Bellator, because I don't think necessarily, you can talk about Feraldo, you can talk about other things maybe being bad matchmaking or matchmaking we don't agree with. I don't think it is at the top of these cards. Maybe it's actually good matchmaking that they're putting lads in that are so closely matched, they're not turning into great fights. Have you any idea what it is, or is it just bad luck?
It's just bad luck. I mean, Bellator can't control what happens when the cage door closes and the lads go in. There's a couple of well-matched fights, but yeah, we are lacking a little bit of the wow factor in some of the fights, I think. A little bit of the entertainment as well. Although, Nemkov and Anderson was kind of, competitive enough and close. It wasn't one-sided or boring, but at the other end of the stick, it wasn't that kind of entertaining as well. And you could kind of, the best fights are the ones that have momentum shifts and everything like that. And I think with these fights, you could kind of tell the way the fight was going to progress very early, which ultimately for us kind of makes it a little bit less exciting.
I agree. The main event, you're dead right in what you said there. It wasn't that it was one-sided or wasn't a blowaway, but I think it was the momentum is what you got 100% right there, because it was close, and then Nimkov got the momentum, and then Nimkov started to win a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, and just kind of took the fight away from Anderson. It was one of them, and for Usman Nurmagomedov, he just destroyed him from pillar to post. I still maintain that Nurmagomedov broke his hand in that fight, because he just completely stopped throwing his left hand throughout the whole thing. There was very little jabs when he was fighting out of the southpaw. There was very little backhands coming when he was fighting out of orthodox. He just, like, from around the second round, he just absolutely stopped throwing it. But having said that, he's just a different level from Patricky Pitbull. Now, Patricky won the title, but I don't think anyone would say that he is the best lightweight in Bellator, at the moment. Is Usman? I suppose we'll find that out. He's right up there though. He's such a good fighter, and a lot of people maybe see the Nurmagomedov name. He's not just a wrestler. He can strike too, Ian. Are you impressed with him?
Yeah, very, very impressed. And I definitely noticed that with his left hand as well. I know we were talking during that fight, and if there was something wrong with it, he definitely was not using it as much as he was at the start of the fight. But he made those adjustments and he still found a way. I thought he fought very smartly on the feet. Distance control was excellent, and that's important against a guy like Patricky Pitbull, who possesses some fight-ending power, really. And then, at the times he chose to kind of close the distance and take the fight down, it didn't allow Pitbull to settle into the fight at all, I thought. And, Pitbull kind of said that after the fight himself, opened up a nasty cut over Pitbull. I mean, he ticked off a lot of boxes. Patricky is maybe not the fighter he used to be, but he's still a very tricky fighter, a very dangerous fighter. And I think Nurmagomedov just put on a really good performance, and I'm excited to see how he progresses. We have the tournament coming up next year, so I'm sure they'll probably do the same as they did with the featherweight tournament, put him in the mix. We'll see him defend his title hopefully a couple of times next year. But, very exciting guy, and one that I'm always going to be looking forward to looking at.
Yeah, I think and I would agree with all that, I think when he started out the fight, and he was fighting at range, and he showed that he could kind of beat Patricky without really taking any of those big shots or being in much trouble. But as you said, Patricky's always dangerous, but he didn't look in any danger. It was like, well, if he's beating him on the feet, we know what's going to happen. We saw what happened when the fight went to the ground. There wasn't really much. And I think most people in the know kind of got that feel in the middle of round one, oh, Jesus, this is going to be just 5 rounds of boring outside fighting. Now, it didn't turn into that. Usman turned up the heat and ended up winning more clearly, as you said, cut up Patricky and all that. So a very, very good performance. But look, there's a lot more coming, and a lot more big matchups there for Usman, and we will talk about them when they come up. And in the Nimkov one, I suppose, finally, we mentioned it a bit, but very good performance here. Look, in the first fight, Corey Anderson was able to get Nimkov down. I spoke about it coming in, that a lot of that was to do with the transitions, that Anderson was able to win those transitions. And if Nimkov won him in this fight, or if Anderson won him in this fight, I think it'd be clear to kind of who the fight would go to, depending on that. Or it could be close like the last one, and one person could win at once. It didn't turn out that way. Nimkov won all the transition. You could see in the first round, every time the fight was going for a takedown, every time the fight was almost hitting the ground, it was Nimkov winning it over and over and over. And then you got to like 2.5 rounds in, maybe 3 rounds in, Nimkov started getting tired because he was fighting at such a pace. He was fighting a way more kind of power heavy game plan in this fight as well. And Anderson just didn't have it in the tank to meet that and overtake it. And when that happened, it was Nimkov's fight from there on in, because Anderson's only way of winning that fight was to hold out until Nimkov got tired and then win. And he didn't have that in the tank. It's funny, watching One Championship this weekend, and actually kind of said it on one of the shows I did for Sherdog. You saw... You watch Muay Thai fights or kickboxing fights, and they're 5 rounds, and a lot of the Thai fighters, you often talk about them, the lads who are over fighting, where the first round is you wait for the bets to come in, you don't really do much, and then you go up a level and up a level and up a level, and it's something you can do in Thai fights, it's something you can do in kickboxing, it's something we don't really see in MMA. And if Corey Anderson maybe had that sort of game plan in here, maybe that's a thing that could have won him the fight. Now, it's very hard to have that game plan when Nimkov actually fights through a different game plan, so you would have needed to go to plan B very, very quickly, which is very funny, because myself and Harry actually have this exact argument or the discussion as a podcast coming out in Speaker's Corner in the next 2 weeks. So if you like that sort of discussion, Patreon is the place for that. But it was really one of those ones where Nimkov fought so well it'd have to take a big turn from Anderson. Mark Henry was in his corner. I like Mark Henry. I think he's a very, very good coach. I don't think he's the best corner man in the world. I don't think he's the best game planner, or being able to switch up a game plan, and he wasn't able to do that here. Now, that's been very, very, very harsh there. You would need to be world class, but we're talking about world class. I think Nimkov, I was seeing the lads talking about the Sherdog rankings. Nimkov is going to be either 1 or 2, I think, in the world in the Sherdog light heavyweight rankings here coming up. I hope I'm not giving away any spoilers or anything, lads. I apologise if I am. But I don't think that's maybe a spoiler to anyone, really, because if you're to put on the rankings and you look at the level that Nimkov has fought and the wins he's had and the streak he's on, he's up there with Prochka, he's up there with Glover, he's up there with all of those lads. And it was a very good performance from him, I thought, altogether. Who do you think is the best light heavyweight in the world? Here, we'll throw that one out, yeah.
I think, honestly, looking at it, for me, it has to be Yuri Prochazka, but I feel, Vadim Nemkov needed to prove something to me and maybe to himself that he was able to compete at the highest level. And I think he did that against Corey Anderson on Friday night. he came back. He came back with a new game plan, which shows that he learned lessons from the first fight, and he fought that game plan perfectly, in my opinion. I think. If I was, I would have to say Yuri Prochazka, just basically he's the UFC champion right now. I think he is the guy to beat. Obviously, we have Teixeira coming in here. I think he could probably beats Glover in the rematch as well. But I think Vadim is up there, top 2, top 3. He's right up there. And there's very little between all of those guys in the light heavyweight division, whether it be UFC or Bellator or wherever right now.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's probably the only division you could say that for, I suppose, at the moment. And I think that's a good thing for the sport. So it's interesting. We'll see how that title fight goes on. That's the next UFC card, isn't it? Or am I mistaken? That's UFC 282, isn't it, Prochazka?
I think there's one more. There's a fight card in between that. I think Stephen Wonderboy Thompson and Holland, and then that one is December 4th.
Yeah, pretty good. We did our look ahead once, and then we forgot to do it.
Yeah, we're going to have to do that maybe next week.
We'll have to. But I think these cards, they're so close. There's only like 2 or 3 weeks between them. We probably, we'll be doing the preview show anyway for it, so it's all good. Speaking of the UFC, let's move over and talk about the UFC. I won't lie, I didn't watch all of this card. There wasn't enough on it for me to watch. There was more important things to watch this weekend, and I think going forward, you look at some of these UFC cards, you look at other cards on the weekend, and there's only so much we can talk about on this podcast. There's only so much we can watch. There's only so much we can cover, and like sometimes you look at the top or the bottom 3 fights here. We've Natalia Silva against Teresa Bleda, Brady Heisted against Fern Garcia, Vanessa Demopoulos against Maria Oliveira. I'm sure there might be a good fighter in the 6 of them, and maybe someone will emerge out of that. But I'll find out about them when they do emerge. I think it's a lot more fruitful for me to put in my time to watching George Hardwick, or to watch Orman Shaban, or to watch the people in One Championship on the way up and watch those big title fights there, or to watch the big Bellator fights or something like that. Now I can watch them all, and I absolutely go back on. I have watched almost everything apart from the bottom of this UFC. But on a weekend like this, and other weekends as well, where let's say we had a massive Cage Warriors fight between Paul Hughes and Jordan Vucinic. We're going to spend the first 45 minutes of the podcast talking about that, and we'll mention the UFC at the end of it because the UFC card isn't great. And this was made worse by the fact that Derek Lewis fell out of the card, but it was still a horrendous card coming in. And I'm saying this now here because it's something I don't want to continue to keep saying. The UFC's putting on horrendous cards. I'm just going to start covering it less and start talking about it less and start talking about the more important things more. Or if we have a topic, we do the chasing back all the time. We talk for an hour and 20 minutes. And it's brilliant. We talk. Yeah. It's exciting. Myself and Harry go on and we talk about something on Speaker's Corner, a topic. Myself and Graham have done it here. A couple of weeks ago, looking back at things, and there's loads of things to talk about in MMA. We don't need to talk about these low-level UFC cards or fights that no one cares about. Now, some people might emerge. Look, Jack Della Maddalena, he's a really, really good prospect, a really good fighter. Absolutely want to talk about him, want to watch his fights. Kennedy Njoku, you could say the same. Is there anything else?
I think Natalia Silva in the first fight of the night looked very impressive. Looked like someone I would like to see again. An impressive spinning back kick knockout over Teresa Bleda. And I think, definitely if there was one to pick out on the undercard, she would be the one. And she'd be coming into the flyweight division, women's flyweight division. And, I agree with you 100%. I'm judging how I feel about cards based. I'll watch them. I'll never be a person we have before. We've criticized cards, but you can only truly criticize a card after you watch a card. And I felt very little after watching that UFC last night. It was like being in one of those rubber life rafts, and then halfway through, it bursting and it started to fill up with water. And as the card went on, it just slowly started sinking and sinking and sinking. And my interest just started waning and waning.
I started watching it to come in event and I bring it down.
yeah. But that's just the way it is. That's how I feel about it. Now. Like you said, there was a couple of great performances on it last night. You mentioned Jack Della Maddalena, fantastic performance against Danny Roberts, showcased some brilliant boxing. I think Muslim Salikov had a great fun performance over Andre Fialho. Kind of, scuppered maybe his run up the welterweight rankings and kind of cooled the jets on. I know we talked about Fialho and he did show some great promise, but Fialho is dealing with a problem where he looks absolutely phenomenal in round 1 and then just gasses out rounds 2 and rounds 3 and doesn't have it in the tank. So it's something he's going to have to figure out if he's to have any chance to even break into the rankings in the welterweight division. I mean, when we're talking about Chase Sherman being in a co-main event of a UFC fight night, that's where the book stops for me. I'm afraid it's absolutely dreadful.
Fight, that was so bad. Like that Waldo Acosta at the end of the second round, he was throwing punches, and I'm like, it looked like one of those YouTuber boxing matches or something. It was that bad, and he was winning. He was winning the fight. It was so bad. But just one thing, you said there, we can't judge a card until it's over or whatever. I actually disagree with that. Like because. And I use Graham's words.
Truly, because you can have some crap cards that, like, if they're all finishes.
That's great. I agree on that point. But that's from an entertainment point of view. That's from did it excite you? Was it a fun night? But to use Graham's word, what's his word he always uses? What's Graham? Jeopardy. There's no jeopardy on this card anywhere. Like maybe for Kennedy and Njoku in the main event, which is turned into the main event, good, and maybe for Jack Della Maddalena coming up. And look, there's jeopardy in every fight for everyone. But for me as a viewer, me as someone covering the fights, there might be jeopardy for one of these fighters in 3 or 4 or 5 fights time if they go on a 3, 4, 5 win streak, and then we'll be doing the preview. I'll go back and I'll watch the 2, 3, 4 fights and I'll talk about it then. Now, people will probably look at me and say, well, it's your job to cover it. It's your job to kind of do all of this. Do you know what? It's my job to cover in depth what I think needs to be covered right now, because MMA doesn't actually lend itself to be able to cover for me or you or anyone to be able to cover everything in depth. You look at some people, like, they never watch One Championship, they never watch Bellator, they don't watch Cage Warriors, they don't look at the young Irish people coming up, and they only watch the UFC. Grand, you can cover Danny Roberts to go back and watch all of his fights before every fight, or Vince Morales or Kevin Navidad or whoever can. I just can't do that. I cannot do that. And I feel like there are more important things to be covering right now. Like, it's not that I don't want to cover people who are up and coming. We're going to talk about Cage Warriors in a few minutes. We did 45 minutes in Cage Warriors 2 or 3 weeks ago, even though Cage Warriors nothing was give a shit since then, so maybe we shouldn't bother anymore. But anyway, an editorial decision, I suppose, in this podcast that I've taken is to try to do that. And maybe this isn't not a great week to explain it, because there is so much anyway. There's no problem doing that. But we have the takeaways now as well, where the two lads talk about it. We have the Q&A if people want to throw in a question and talk about it or ask another question. But I really think the editorial nature of having an hour a week to speak about something, if there is so much, it needs to be things that matter more. And there's, like, a lot of these things just simply don't matter yet. Now, it's not that they don't matter, it's that they don't matter yet, or they don't matter in the great scheme of things right now. And
it's not really going to change either.
No,
and
it's going to get worse.
It could get worse, and that's it. It's just maybe as people that we've been looking at it for the last good few years, it's an adjustment that we have to make, because we're normally used to looking at the best coming from the UFC, but it's just simply not happening anymore. So yeah, I think it's very well said. I'd have to agree, and it's an adjustment I found really hard to make lately too. Where is, like, I did enjoy tuning in to almost every UFC card. There was always at least something, but and there was a little bit of something there with the main event on Saturday night, but when that falls off, the card just really fell flat. And we just have to kind of suck it up and go on.
100%. When you're talking about entertainment as well, right? There's probably no one you would want in a co-main event that's topping a shitty card to save it with some madness than Ian Cutelaba. He's the perfect guy because he tries his very best not to be insane, and then it fails for him every single fucking time.
It's like he has a switch that whenever he gets hit onto the nose, just the game plan goes out the window and he just goes bonkers. And it didn't do him any favors last night.
No, and look, he's training out of Extreme Couture as well. It seems to be a running theme here with Extreme Couture that just the game plan seemed to be just horrendously bad. Now, I suppose he started with it when you'd expect him to start with to go for the takedowns and try to get him to the floor. But the fact that he struck with Kennedy at any stage, like, it didn't actually look like he had that much trouble getting Kennedy to the ground in any way. Like, every time he tried to get him inside, Kennedy defended well at times, there's no doubt about it. But every time he defended well, it took him time to like get to the cage and defend and push back out. There was a couple of times that Ian just like jumped in, caught a single leg, and it worked so easy for him. Now, he did get kneed on the way down with one, but that knee, it hurt him, but it was the mistakes that came after that were actually way worse than the knee itself. I think if he'd just gone back in, took a step inside rather than dropping his face down, drop down once you're in there, catch the single leg and either take him down with that, which is unlikely, or push him up against the cage, the body locks were working for him. Every time he got in there and he kind of kicked the legs out from under him, Kennedy either had to defend for his life or he got taken down, like every single time. And then he got hit with one knee on the way in, which was a very good shot, and then he just started throwing punches. I'm like, what is going on here? What is going on here? But in fairness to Kennedy, lots of fighters in his position there would have either given up the submission or got ground and pounded or not thrown that knee and not be confident enough, or thrown a looser knee that wouldn't have landed and just got taken down and dominated on top again. But he was good. I thought he was everything that Cutelaba wasn't really. He was trying to throw his technical shots. They're getting better. He's not the most technical striker in the world, but they're definitely getting better. He didn't go mad. He didn't panic, and he did the things he needed to do. He showed his power, and he went in there and he got the finish after that knee, and it was good stuff from him. Look, I struggled to call him a prospect. He still isn't that good, like I would say, but
yeah, I think he's a fighter who has really found his way in his last two fights, and it was a huge opportunity for him last night going in and as the main event. And, I think he seized that opportunity quite well. He left us with a memorable finish. It was a nice finish and sequence with the knee. I think it was a total of 3 beautiful knees in the finishing sequence overall, and capitalized on Cutelaba standing and banging with him. And yeah, I mean, he's there. He's someone that we're going to keep an eye on now. And I think, he's steadily progressing. Obviously, it was, 1 step forward and 2 step backs in his early UFC career. But he's after coming in here with, a step up in competition and Ian Cutelaba, getting him out of there. And now he moves on to the next one. He's definitely someone that we should be keeping an eye on. But he's going to have a lot tougher tests coming forward. Indeed he is. Let's move on from the UFC. So, and let's, we'll talk about a bit of WIMMA here. There was a mixed weekend, I suppose, for the women of Irish mixed martial arts. Dee Begley lost over in Combatches Global. You never know what Combatches. I don't think you've seen a full fight. I haven't seen. I saw the finishing sequence and I didn't. Look, it was one of those fights that didn't last too long. Anyway, Dee Begley got hit with a lot of big shots. She got hit to the body ferociously. It kind of went viral. There was a lot of people talking about it, unfortunately for Dee, but the opponent she came in against was very, very tough. And then Donnie McCormick got a very, very good win over Invicta. Let's talk about Dee first. I know you've spoken to her a few times. She always comes across very, very well, and she's a great amateur career, and coming into a pro, it's been tough for her, hasn't it, Ian? What do you think of Saturday or Friday? It's tough because, like you said, we don't know a lot of the level of these fighters that Combatche are producing for and Palahan kind of experienced it in his last fight as well. But yeah, Dee was unlucky here. Look, she came out after and she said there was no excuses. She said she had the best camp. She was feeling in the best condition that she's felt in a long time. She looked in great condition, but you know what? Sometimes you can go in there and you can get caught with something early, and you find it hard to make that recovery, and that's really what happened to Dee against Marisa Sanchez. That body shot that really kind of it kind of upset her flow. She couldn't get settled, and Sanchez kind of capitalized on that, and if that happens early in a fight, and it's happened to a few other fighters that we'll be talking about, maybe in Cage Warriors, and to maybe Danny, who we'll be talking about next, happened in one of her fights. It's hard to come back sometimes from that, but it'll be a good lesson for Dee. She'll come back, and hopefully she gets another crack there at Combache, and she'll get the win the next time.
Yeah, I was just actually smiling there because I was looking at the Invicta card here, getting ready to talk about Danny McCormack, and I was like, that was 4 days ago. It was like a week ago. And then as I was saying 4 days ago in my head, it changed from 11:59 to 12 and went from the 20th to the 21st. Like isn't it right on like it's 7, what is it, 3 o'clock your time now or whatever? That was the weirdest moment of my life. It's like I changed.
I was wondering, you were smiling. I was like, what? Am I saying something wrong?
It's like I changed time with my brain here. It's fucking so weird. But look, on Dee, she'll be back in a tough loss there. She won 3 or 4 in a row before that, hadn't she, as well? So I don't think she's in danger there or anything like that. So very, very interested to see what she does next and where she comes back at. But for Danny, God almighty, I was so impressed with Danny McCormack. I watched a little bit of Maria Mazar before this, and I was impressed with her, to be honest. She didn't have maybe the best record in the world. I think 8-4, so not a bad record at all. But I thought she was a good striker. And we saw Danny in her last fight in Dublin, where she got obviously knocked out heavily. Or was that the 2 fights ago? No, yeah, it was 2 fights ago, where she got knocked out heavily against Stephanie Page, and then she lost by split decision in the next one after that, a close one, obviously. And you're thinking, oh God, she's coming in there against another striker, but her striking looked very good here. I think Danny, she's still very new in her career in terms of, I suppose, adding that striking. Like, I know, her husband is a very good kickboxer and stuff as well, and they're working on it all the time. But we've seen Danny, I suppose, talk about wanting to show that striking more in recent fights, when the grappling was working well from her. And you need to find that balance. If you're going out just showing the striking and it's causing you losses or anything, that's probably the wrong thing to do. But in this fight, she went out there, she showed the striking, and offensively anyway, it looked superb. Look, I think she'll probably go back and watch it and see a couple of issues defensively, but not half as much, I think, as before. This was so impressive, by far the best performance from what I've seen of Danny Stannon of her career anyway. And I think if the improvement we saw here is the improvement we see the next time and the next time and the next time, come 3, 4, 5 fights time, Danny McCormack is going to be a very, very, very good fighter. So we talked about it before, Ian. Danny McCormack in Invicta, Sean O'Bannon in Invicta. We were actually only talking about it last night, saying the Irish female fighters coming through. Invicta is a great place for them. They put on good fights, not easy matchmaking, but the right sort of matchmaking, and this is exactly what it is. So we can get into fight in a second, but great for Danny to get back to winning ways and a great performance.
Yeah, it was brilliant. On top of everything else and showing improvements in her skill set, to kind of overcome the mental hurdles that she's had to recently come over as well. And she spoke about that with us on the L Triangle. And after the fight as well, going from undefeated to losing 2 in a row, to leave in Bellator, there's a lot of uncertainty there. And I can imagine, I'm very looking forward to speaking to her again, maybe to kind of break it down with her exactly what she was going through. But to produce a performance like that against a really tough opponent as well, it has to be said, was great to see. I think, she showed that she's improved in her striking. She hurt Mazar early in the fight. And I think, that might have been a little bit to her detriment, where she might have been looking to land that shot again throughout the fight rather than maybe using her jab a little bit more. But she defended the choke as well, pretty well in the second round. So it was round 1 and round 3 were clear for Danny. It was the 10-8 round in round 1. And I mean, that will give her a bunch of confidence. She called for the title shot. I think she did fantastic on the mic after it as well. You have to seize those opportunities. We've talked about it time and time again. And she just did a great job overall. And it's kind of great to see her back in form. And I would agree with you. That was one of the best performances that she's produced so far in her professional career. And I think it's a very exciting future for her and the strawweight division in Invicta as well. Of course, we have Sean O'Bannon in the mix there as well, and Valeska Machado, who went on to win the strawweight tournament on the night as well. So, Danny could be looking at a title shot against her in her next fight, and that would be really exciting.
100%. The one thing you mentioned, the post-fight press or the post-fight interview as well, the fact the cage are just still not doing him, actually turned off. I don't know, did George Hardwick do one tonight or not? I turned it off for him, but
he didn't.
He didn't, yeah. And none of the rest of them did on the way up. So it's just so fucking annoying. Why are Cage Warriors doing that? Just, I absolutely hate it. But on Danny's performance as well, for me, I agree with what you said. I don't necessarily think she was looking for the shot for the rest of the fight, but I think you are right in the fact that maybe she could have changed things up a little bit more. But that's one of those things you go back on and look at and you improve the next time. It was very interesting because the power. I don't think I've ever seen that power for Danny before. We haven't seen that power from Danny before. I don't think it looks so good in the first. Mazar did get the takedown in the second, and that, jiu-jitsu defense from Danny was so good. She had the hand around the neck for most of the second round. Danny got out, defended it very well, and had a very good last minute. And then in the third, you look at that as well, and Danny got an early takedown in the third. She landed some nice ground and pound and nice strikes after that when it got back to the feet. But then Mazar got the takedown herself, and you're thinking, Jesus, how good are the judges over here? Are they going to fucking be giving that late takedown to win the round? I know it shouldn't. But what happened then when Danny got the fight to the ground, she just started elbowing the fucking shit out of her from her back. And Danny McCormick listens to the SevereMMA podcast, and she's a Patreon subscriber. And I'm taking a bit of credit for that one now. I feel like the judging talk, she worked from her bottom. She worked from the bottom. It's more, as Brad Wharton said tonight, it's more what you do with the position than the position itself. And she clearly won that post takedown fighting at the end of that round, and clearly won the fight for me, and she absolutely did. So shout out to the judges, they got it right. Very good performance from Danny.
What do you think of the open scoring in the fight? We had open scoring on the night.
Look, I'm for open scoring if there's basically no one in the crowd, if there's no one around, if there's no madness, if everyone understands the scoring criteria. I'm absolutely for it. The problem with open scoring, there'll be no problem with open scoring in a local show or something like that. Absolutely none at all. The problem with local open scoring is when you get to the big shows, when you get to, UFC Russia and Habib is fighting, or when you get to Bellator Dublin and James Gallagher's in the main event, everyone thinks it's close, comes into the fifth round and he's 3-1 down. That's that's the problem with open scoring, and we've many other problems as well. I'm not totally against open scoring if the education is there. And MMA fans love throwing out education. We love throwing out that word. But if everyone understands the scoring system, I have no problem with it. The problem is when people don't understand the scoring system, all that open scoring does is have more of the same problems we have at the end of fights, but now just during the fight. So, but when everyone's at the end of the fight, they're incredulous. How did they get that score? How did they get that score? Now we get it after the first round. We get it after the second round. So it's I actually don't understand what it achieves. But anyway, we will. I suppose that's a longer chat.
Like it didn't visibly, looking at the fights, it didn't seem to affect any of the fights whatsoever. I don't think anybody kind of upped their performance or downed their performance. To be honest, looking at when the scores were coming in for rounds 1 and round 2, obviously rounds 3 was left to the official announcement. But interesting kind of to look at it and see that open scoring and kind of know what way the fight is going as we're watching it. But sure. I kind of like the mystique of not knowing, as they say.
Yeah, I've never really made that point myself. If I'm arguing open scoring, I definitely understand why people do say that, and I get it. And we've often talked about MMA, and to safeguard the future of MMA, we need to keep it exciting. Especially what we just talked about a few minutes ago there, like MMA is becoming less and less fucking exciting all the time in terms of what we even want to tune in to watch. So could that be a part of it? Absolutely. I think if you leave that side of the argument out, even though I don't necessarily agree with it, I think it's foolhardy to leave that side of the argument out. So I think you're right to say that. But yeah, look, it's interesting to see it. It's funny though, I've spoken to was this on in Kansas? Let me just see. Colorado, yeah. I've talked to the Kansas. I actually had him on the podcast for. If you search it there, you'll be able to find it. But a lot of the data that came out, it was very much shown to be pro open scoring and and I actually went through it and I had a discussion with him, and I just like, I could easily go, I actually did in messages, I could easily go back through them again and find out exactly what it was, but like the stats out there that are very pro open scoring are actually massively deceiving, and easy to tear apart. If luckily, like me, you've a degree in maths and economics and have done a lot of stats, and I can actually look at them, and I don't think there's many of them around who know a lot about MMA and a lot about fucking stats. So anyway, we will Jesus, I always swore I'd never get into this open scoring debate, but here you have me in, you got me into it.
I gotcha.
Let's talk about Cage Warriors, and we are just after watching it here only an hour or so ago. It was a brilliant double card. Knockout after knockout after knockout after knockout. Only one decision on the whole thing. It was a split decision. It was a close one between Marc Charrier and Daniel Bazant, but the rest of them, just Jesus Christ. Let's talk about we go from the bottom to the top. Tough night for Team Rhino. Paddy Wilkinson knocked out 43 seconds with a massive head kick against Milton Cabral. And then the standing TKO for Adam Darby, who looked so good in his debut last time out against Mush Al-Hassani, who looked just absolutely crazy in the fight with his eyes wide open and walking forward. Jeez, for Paddy, it's his pro debut. That big step up in Cage Warriors, you probably want kind of, and he hasn't fought in 4 years, since he fought as an amateur. You probably want one of those fights where you maybe work your way into it. You get to take your time, and next thing after 42 seconds, you're on the ground looking up at the lights, and there's a lad coming down throwing fucking ground and pound at you. Really, really tough start. You'd have to feel for Paddy Wilkinson, wouldn't you?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Like you kind of said it perfectly there. You need to kind of settle into the fight, and it's kind of hard to do that, like you said, after a 4-year layoff. Plus, you're coming in as your professional debut against a 4-2 guy with a lot of experience as well, which is not easy to do. And he just learned a lesson, and unfortunately, he ended up getting TKO'd. He'll be back. I'd like to see him against a similar kind of experienced opponent the next time. He deserves that other crack at the Cage Warriors. And to be honest, the same thing could be said about Adam Darby in the next fight as well.
I thought that stoppage when I saw it first, I was like, oh geez, I'm not sure about that. But every time I watched it, I probably watched it 5 or 6 times. It looks better and better and better, to be honest, from Daniel Mavahedi. Mush Al-Hassani comes right down the middle, hits Adam Darby with a big shot. It clearly rocks him. He takes another step. He's clearly still rocked, and Mush is just about to throw another shot, and he's wide open for it. Now, if anyone heard the podcast last week where we were talking about it, when you're wide open for a shot and you do not have the ability to block that shot, are not cognizant to it, I'll give you one of them maybe. I will give you one, but if you're taking a second one, not for me. The problem with this one is he was standing there and you could see him winding up, and he's after already hitting him with a fucking exocet down the middle, and there's a second one coming. And to me, this was absolutely brilliant refereeing, because this is the sort of one you look at first replay, you're thinking, oh Jesus, or live, you're thinking, oh what? And then you're thinking, oh Jesus, and you're looking at the second one, it's like, fuck it, that's actually brilliant. He saved that man there. He really, really did save him to fight another day. This I said it at the time over in the group chat, this was either a terrible stoppage or a great stoppage. And then I saw the replays, and I think it's bordering on great. I really think it's a very, very good stoppage. What do you think?
And we have the luxury of looking back at it a couple of times and in slow motion as well. And Movelli did excellently well. Like you have to say, to make those calls in the split second and in the middle of the madness as well is very hard to do. And I think he called this perfectly. It's like when you're talking about these kind of stoppages, I always think about what's next, like, and what you don't want to happen next. And obviously we had it with Israel Adesanya as well, but in reality, all it takes is one more, and it can turn from a standing TKO to an absolutely devastating knockout. And we don't want that. And Adam Darby certainly doesn't want that either so early into his career. He'll live to fight another day. Credit to Andy Ryan, who came into the cage and was kind of saying to the ref as well, good stoppage. He agreed with the stoppage. And, Andy always calls it as it is. So credit to him for that. And unfortunately, Adam, he just didn't get going. Kind of, I think Asani kind of went in and said, fuck the feeling out process. I'm going to kind of come in and put the pressure on you, the same as Cabral did to Wilkinson in the first fight. And that's the thing. You have to be ready to go from the first bell. And not saying the guys weren't, but, they just kind of got caught with those shots. And these things happen and they'll bounce back and they'll be competing and they'll learn from it and it'll be all good. And I'm just glad that, Adam didn't suffer. I'd say, because it was so early into the fight, if that maybe had been a little later into the fight, he might have dropped. His legs were still strong. It was basically the first punch of the fight.
That's a great point.
So, I think it was a really, really good call to stop the fight. And I think the replay has kind of just doubled down on that opinion as well if you look back on him.
Yeah, it must be tough too, the fact your teammate who's at the same weight class as you has just got knocked out. That can't be easy. That really, really can't be easy to prepare for your fight and then set. And we know the way Cage Warriors move. It was, I was looking at Andy Ryan in the cage after a fight, and then I'm looking at Andy Ryan. Oh, geez, he's back in the cage again, straight away. You hardly get time to blink. That must be very, very tough. But look, as I said, the two lads will be back. As we'll talk about in a second, we have an Ireland card coming up here as well, so I'm sure they'll be on that card. So at least, look, there's something to look forward to after this in terms of the next step. The rest of that, there was kind of a double card here with Cage Warriors, and the fights went so quickly that there was massive amounts of time between fights, which is what can you do, I suppose. Matthew Bayfield beat Daniel Leandro in the next fight. Kind of just beat him down, ended up ground and pounding him. And then Matthew Bonner beat Alan Carlos. Look, Alan Carlos has been around a long time. He's not what he used to be, and it's a good win back on the road for Matthew Bonner, back up at 185. I think that's the best weight class for him, if I'm being honest. And landed some lovely left hooks and lovely ground and pound here. So a good performance from him. We had Eric Silva lost to Jan Quay-Higgins, and Will Curry looked very good against Mike Chimu after getting knocked down in that. But I suppose the three biggest fights won the card. Well, the two biggest fights in Amran Shaban as well. Amran Shaban, look, he looked much improved. He was fighting George McManus, who, look, George is a good fighter, and I say it all the time, he's a very, very good test. And I think what Amran Shaban showed in this fight is that he is over and above a test. It's hard to tell exactly where Amran is after this performance in terms of the top level of the division, but what it does show is he's ready to move towards the top level of that division, because you don't do this to George McManus unless you're a very good fighter, as we've seen before. And he put on a destruction against George McManus, jabbed the face off him, looked so good, and went in there towards the end of the fight. He could have just jabbed his way to the decision here. We can all be honest about that. There's no problem with that. But he didn't. He went for the finish and he landed that beautiful body shot, right hand body shot down the middle. You usually don't see the right hand liver punch. It's always usually the little left hook, or maybe a teep to the body or something like that, or a kick to the body. But it was the right hand liver punch knockout. Brilliant from Amran Shaban. This was, look, it was the best display of his career for me. I thought he looked brilliant. Let's not go overboard in terms of, and I know Chris Fields will be saying the same thing, George McManus is a good fighter, but he's a good fighter to look good against as well. And if he can look as good as this in fights going forward, by God, he looked very fucking good. Were you impressed?
Oh, very impressed. Very, very impressed. I mean, he got drawn into the grappling exchanges, I think, a little bit too much in round one, but the ability that he showed to come into round two, kind of keep level-headed, keep patient, keep his distance and get off that jab. And it was the jab that was the winning of the fight for him. He got comfortable landing that jab and was busting up the face of George McManus, then introducing combinations slowly into the round two. Round three, introducing the body shots was the final piece of the puzzle. Excellent kind of fight IQ, game planning, not to kind of get excited or rush for the finish as well. We've seen the likes of a couple of fighters kind of rush a little bit too much. I think the guy I was thinking about was Eric Da Silva, kind of rushed his finish a little bit. He kind of came steaming in. You've seen what happened in that fight against Quay-Higgins. I think Amran did very well to kind of cool the jets. He knew and his confidence built as the fight was going on that he was the better fighter, and he got a beautiful finish, very clean work, and he needs a good jumping competition next, and I'm excited to see him, and I'm sure we'll probably see him on that Dublin card next year.
Oh, I think we will. I'm looking forward to seeing that. Morgan Charrier in. I wonder will we be seeing him in the Dublin card? I wonder if Paul Hughes is looking for an opponent. Could it be Morgan getting back in there? Look, this looked like a setup fight. It didn't feel like that once the fight happened. Split decision, and you know what? It was one of those ones that I was looking at it afterwards, and they were saying in commentary, "Oh, Morgan has it, and he has it," and I was thinking to myself, does he fucking have it? You know, the first round was very close. I know that Sharia had the better of it for maybe 3.5 minutes, but what Bazant did in the last minute and a half-ish of that round was some very, very good work there. Now, I thought the decision was right. I thought Sharia did win. I thought he won the third as well. That third was, he won the second. The third was very, very close as well, but it was, it was one of those fights that could have gone either way. Sharia just got, look, we were talking about this in the chat a little bit. Sharia, to me, was fighting a 3-round pace here. And it worked well for him in terms of his offense, but defensively, he kept getting hit over and over. And he kept getting, not only hit, he looked rocked. He looked like he was going to get knocked out like multiple times. And now he didn't. So, okay, he's kind of coming back. And he was fighting normally after that as well. But this was, it wasn't the best performance in the world by Sharia. He got the job done. A good performance from Bazant as well. But you expect more, I suppose, from Sharia.
Yeah, Bazant fought very well in the fight, but I think Morgan Sharia kind of allowed him to fight well. I was kind of waiting for Sharia to kind of pull away as the fight was going on, and it never really happened. You know, he was making peculiar decisions where he was kind of connecting on the feet and then going for the takedown, which opened up scrambles that Bazant was kind of able to capitalize on times, and the fight was very close. There's no way I'd argue that split decision at all. I don't feel that Sharia fought to the level that he can fight. It felt like he maybe had the weight of pressure on his shoulders, perhaps. Maybe not sure of himself, obviously coming back from a couple of losses as well. But I mean, I would be expecting maybe that win will give him that confidence back. I'm looking forward maybe to seeing what he's like, but definitely from what we've seen in the past, it wasn't maybe a performance to write home about from Morgan Sharia, but an important win all the same against a tough, durable guy at the same time. And if Paul Hughes is sticking around for one more, that would be we kind of have the perfect opportunity. Do you reckon with Morgan Sharia, you know, he was on the precipice of joining the UFC so much, and then to have fallen, and you know, it's something that Jordan Fucenic is going to have to deal with now as well, being so close and obviously losing to the likes of Hughes, and unfortunately guys have to experience that, but it can take a little bit of wind out of your sails. It can kind of take away a bit of your belief, and you know, it's not easy to kind of get back at it and get those wins to kind of build yourself back up to get to the UFC, especially in Cage Warriors. I'm
not sure with Sharia because he keeps signing new Cage Warriors deals all the time, like whether he wins or whether he loses. It's weird. I don't know, does he want to?
Somehow he managed to get behind closed doors. He still managed to get fans into the court, like cheering as well. So fair play to him.
They were the loudest fans in the place. But yeah, I definitely for Vucinic I would agree with that. But I don't know for Sharia is the simple answer for me in that. Like, I don't know, he seems like the sort of lad that might be happy enough fighting away in Cage Warriors. He probably has a good contract with him, because if they go to France, he'll earn a lot of money for him, you know, there. And you see Graham Boylan, Graham Boylan, put out a thing recently about their Twitter interactions. And I was thinking, lads, someone should be paying me for my Twitter, because I have more Twitter interactions than you fuckers. But a lot of that, I guarantee you, is based on Sharia. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know really. Do you know what's massive for Sharia, I think? The next fight. Because he's one of those lads that he's not the youngest in the world in terms of, like, he's not some up and comer. He's had 25 fights now as well. And you don't fight for free. Okay, he's 27, like, so he's not some baby or anything like that. But and he's not old per se. But now is the time, as you say, like, now is the time for him, and maybe that big fight against Hughes. Let's talk about the main event, and we'll talk briefly about the Cage Warriors Dublin announcement, because we're going to do a full podcast on that this week, so we won't delve massively in that. But anyway, we'll talk about that in a second. Hardwick against Bungard. I actually don't think there's much to talk about in this one. It was the fight we expected, I suppose. Bizarre matchmaking. Brad Wharton even said it on the broadcast. I wonder, were they just struggling for a fight? Were they struggling getting an opponent for Hardwick? Were they struggling for someone who made sense? And next thing we've Chris Bungard. Like, Ian is absolutely brilliant at bringing in like unknown people to fight in main events. Our fight for titles, our fight just in big fights. the problem with this wasn't an unknown guy. This was a known guy, and everyone kind of knew what was going to happen. And to be honest, I actually thought it brought George Hardwick down a little bit. I didn't think he looked great. He needed to absolutely destroy Chris Bungard, and it took him nearly 3 rounds to do it. I was not that impressed.
I think it's a little harsh. I think he looked good. I mean, Bungard came in and he did what you're supposed to try to do against a guy like Hardwick. Fight on the front foot, get Hardwick moving backwards, kind of get him off his game a little bit, let him get settled into the fight. But it was the leg kick that kind of messed up that game plan for Bungard. And then, Bungard had an inability to kind of check those leg kicks. They kept kind of backing him up and slowing him down and hurting his movement. And then I think George Hardwick kind of smelled blood. I had a feeling it wasn't going to probably go past 2 rounds. He slowly upped the pace. George Hardwick did, landed some beautiful body work, and trademark left hook to the body was the final blow. But I mean, if you're Hardwick, you're going to have to be looking to try and fight better level of competition of this, whether that's in Cage Warriors or whether that's away from Cage Warriors. If a move to the UFC is now the time for him. He never was in bother against Chris Bungard. You're going to need to get better tests from that at that stage of your career. So it'll be interesting to see what's next for him. What do you think is next for Hardwick?
Well, there's 2 things I'd like to see, right? So first of all, we have Cage Warriors Dublin coming up, the 3 Arena, the April 29th, right? The 3 Arena. And you'd need to sell tickets for that, right? Now, first of all, I would love to see Joe McColgan versus George Hardwick. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Joe is going to come back. I was trying to get Joe back myself tonight, but I don't think it's happening. I would just wonder if we might see a super fight. Paul Hughes versus George Hardwick, featherweight champion versus lightweight champion. Conor McGregor, part 2. You're going up, you're taking the 2 belts that Conor McGregor had, you're standing up in the cage, you're getting signed by the UFC. Like, if you're fighting in the 3 Arena, Cage Warriors can afford to pay you more. If you're selling tickets to be in the big main event, the super fight, they can afford to pay you for one last fight before you go to the UFC. Now, it's a big risk. Maybe you get signed for the UFC, you wouldn't need to fight George Hardwick, you wouldn't need to go up in weight, you wouldn't need to do all that. But,
Jesus, that's
your thing.
That's a great fight, but like you said, is it worth the risk? Does a fight against a rematch against Sharia kind of do maybe more for him, which is a lesser risk? That's what I'd be looking at. But my goodness, I never even thought of that until you said it, and it's a very interesting. But you're right, you're going to have to stack that card. I wouldn't be disappointed if they put all title fights on the main card there, and it should be something they should be looking at doing. For me. And there's opportunities there to put some Irish guys in the mix as well. I think, why not? Let's stack this card. This first Cage Warriors card since the Cork one in Ireland. Lots of talent on the roster. Let's stack the shit out of it and let's get people in the gate. And like you said, they've got to do that. So it's going to be very interesting to see this card unfolding. Yeah. But my goodness, Paul against George is it's a spicy one.
Oh, it's spicy. It's very spicy. We leave it at that now because I said we will have another show on this. We're going to maybe go a half an hour talking about this. There's no Q&A this week because I forgot to put out the balls for Q&A. I'll be honest. So we're going to do that. We'll have that Wednesday morning out on Patreon. Do you know what? If you retweet this podcast and go, Jesus, Sean and Ian were great, and 5 people do that, I'll put it out for free. So that's all. It's only 5 people. Quote or retweet the podcast. You'll see it over at SevereMMA or at Sean Sheehan BA or at Ian O'Neill. Anywhere you find it. Jesus at Sean Sheehan BA at I O'Neill MMA were great with the retweet the podcast, and I'll put it out for free on Wednesday morning. So there you go. You can have that. Right, Ian, one last thing to talk. Well, 2 quick things to talk about. I've done reviews of the One Championship card, so we won't go massively into them, but maybe a quick look back at them. I thought it wasn't a great decision in the Ruslan Imelbek versus Izzy Fitikefu fight. I thought Fitikefu won that. Very, very close fight there. Jae Woong Im does what Jae Wong Im does and knocked out Kevin Bellion, one of the best counter strikers in the world of MMA. He's absolutely brilliant. Steve Lawman beat Bibiano Fernandez. I would have had 4 out of 4 bets got right this week only for Steve Lawman. But what a fighter he is. Like, Steve Lawman, I think he should be up there 17-2 now in his career. I know there's probably a lot of people listening to this don't know who Stephen Lawman is. This guy is legit as they come. He's very, very good. Right, 17-2, and he hasn't lost since 2000. He lost in 2016, lost in 2013. He's beaten Franz Malambo along the way. He's beaten twice. He obviously beat Bibiano Fernandez. He's been in one championship now for a good while. He fought over in Brave. This guy is very, very, very good. And if you don't know him, you probably should know him. And then Christian Lee in the main event. If you haven't seen this fight, this is probably the fight from the weekend to watch. In my opinion, Herb Dean did what Herb Dean does. This should have been stopped in the first round. I thought this was horrendous. I thought Abasov won it. I thought he was going to hurt him really badly, but Herb Dean let it go, and Christian Lee came back and he finished him. And unbelievable. You saw this fight, Ian, didn't you? This was comeback of the year territory.
Unbelievable comeback from Christian Lee. We've seen him produce this before, but you cannot question his heart. I mean, unreal. For a young man, Abasov gave him every kind of opportunity to get out of that fight, and he stayed there. Herb Dean gave him, like you said, every chance as well. Maybe Chatri had a little bit of a word with Herb maybe before the fight. You never know. But,
I can neither confirm nor allegedly.
Allegedly.
But I do think generally one championship are kind of like let the fights go, and they're also like the yellow cards if you're not fighting and things like that. I think they do try to be different, and I do think they want their referees to be different as well. So I don't think it's a thing they hide necessarily, to be honest.
No, and like Chatri always wants to give out the 50k bonuses, and he is about excitement, and it does, like, he definitely puts pressure on the refs to give out those yellow cards. Action, and there was plenty of action in that kind of main event. Christian Lee now, to me, is one of the most exciting prospects in MMA right now. I really enjoy watching his fights. He picked up, that was his second championship.
And Abasov missed weight. So Christian Lee was gone up from lightweight to welterweight. His opponent missed weight at welterweight, and he still beat him and won the belt. So that's some achievement.
Brilliant. And now I guess that fight will probably likely set up a fight between Roberto Soldic and Christian Lee.
There's two options here, I think, because Soldic is fighting coming up pretty soon. He's fighting on the next card, which is in 2 weeks' time. But on the other card that happened this weekend, Sagiris Magaev won and beat Shinya Aoki at lightweight. So if Soldic wins his fight, he's probably the option at welterweight. But I think Soldic's actually up the weight above as well. He could be coming back down, because the way one championship is with their weight classes. Who knows what fucking weight class they're at. But Ismagaev is as good as fucking Soldic. He is a fucking beast. So Christian Lee might have two of the hardest fights in the world.
It's a double-edged sword that he's on right now, isn't it, Christian Lee?
Oh, stop. You're
poison.
I hope he's getting paid well, because you're talking about quality outside of the UFC and maybe people not meeting the same level. God almighty, he's meeting a serious fucking level of fighters here. Like Ismagaev 22-2. I've watched a lot of his fights because he's, I've been covering these one championship cards, and, he fought Shinya Aoki this time, which was just a destruction. Shinya actually started pretty well. He was throwing these big head kicks and things like that, but he immediately kind of got taken down and destroyed.
Shinya is the type of guy who forgets what it's like to get in there and fight, and he's like all action until he starts taking punishment, and then he's like, oh shit, I've been doing this too long.
No.
Yeah. I'm out, fam. I'm out.
Cheers. It's my round. I just got to the bar. I just got to the jacks there. Hop out the back in. But yeah, look, a good win for Ismagaev anyway. I always fuck up his name. It's actually Isgakmayev. I think. I don't know. I always fuck up.
Just shout out to Cosmo Alexander. Obviously, he dipped his toe in mixed martial arts. He produced an unbelievable performance and then retired afterwards, got the 50k, celebrated like hell. If you're going to go out if you're going to go out, you would go out like Cosmo Alexandra. Absolutely sicken a guy with an inside elbow, knock him out cold, retire, get 50k, and walk off into the sunset.
What was it again? This was the best 3-shot combination I've seen in a long time. So it was the front kick, body shot, elbow. I have it in my notes wherever they are. But this, if you haven't seen this, not good, unreal. And also, it's kickboxing. But Roman Kralika against Iraz Azizpor, the heavyweight title. So it's the light heavyweight champion fighting the heavyweight champion. This was the comeback of the year type as well, but this was in kickboxing. An unbelievable fucking scrap. This was really, really good. I'll tell you, one championship put on some really exciting shit. They're really
not all MMA, but I guarantee it. Like when I say, what I look for in cards, do I feel satisfied after watching every single time? Yeah. One card's just deliver.
To be fair,
it's
they
the
do.
Rules. It's the way they want the fighters to fight. They're leaning on excitement. We're in an age with MMA right now where it's kind of entertainment, maybe over excitement, but that's it. Not in one championships.
I've been watching so much one championship recently. I was watching the Cage Warriors fight tonight, and I was like, knee him in the head on the ground.
I know.
Fuck away, and he can. But
testament to one championships who have turned Sean Sheehan into a kickboxing fan. We thought we never could do it.
Kickboxing aficionado, I would call myself now. Grappling as well. Did you see this? Fuck up his name. Aung La Sang. I think I got it right. Aung La Sang. He beat Yushin Okami was the ghost of Yushin Okami. He looked absolutely horrendous, but Aung La landed a lovely knee from side control. From half guard. He landed a knee to the head from half guard. Just imagine that now. He landed a knee on the way down. He landed another knee to the body from side control. And I don't know if it was half guard or kind of just a far away side control, but it was like a hook knee on the ground. Something you'd never see in any other promotion. It wasn't massive or anything like that, but it was a cool shot. But he got the win there, back on form. Like Renier the Ritter is fighting as well in 2 weeks' time. So there's a lot of those lads we just mentioned there. They could be fighting him as well. Very interesting to see where we go. Shock of the weekend was probably Song Hung Woo beat Yuya Wakamatsu. Yuya has only lost in the last few years to Adriana Moraes and Demetrius Johnson in the last 4 years. So that was a big win there for Sun Hun Woo. Just kind of came out, pushed Wakamatsu backwards, and he couldn't get back on and ended up mounting him and ground and pounding him. Woo Il Kwan got a win over Mark Abelardo as well. That was a third round. There was knees on takedowns all weekend. There was one in the UFC. There was one in Cage Warriors. Aung La Sang got one. So did Woo Il Kwan here against Mark Abelardo. This was a bit of a questionable stoppage. I thought it was good, to be honest, but he kind of face planted and the fight got finished there. And after that, then there was Bruno Pucci, who I think is the other half of Angela Lee. He ended up losing to Kirill Gorobets. Unanimous decision in that one, and that was all the MMA. Ahmed Ian, I'm going to ask you about this. Ahmed Mujtab, I don't know if you saw this, beat Abru Arim Magalesh. He got a triangle choke, and it was a leg in triangle choke. I've never seen that before. So he triangled him, and your man's own leg was in the triangle choke. I was like, would that not give you more space? Would that not give you more space, no?
I don't know. Sometimes maybe when you squeeze in a particular way, it might kind of, I don't know. I haven't seen it, so I'm not even going to try and give an uneducated opinion from someone who hasn't even seen it. So I don't know. That was the one that was on like really early in the morning, and I haven't got the chance to go back and watch it yet. But I'll have to go back and check it out, and maybe Harry Powell will be the guy now to ask for that. He'd give us the proper breakdown.
Hold on, we have it here. It's going into the chat now, so we'll do a live fucking watch along here of this triangle. 2 seconds now. I'm sending it. Here we go. So it's up on the if it's up on the One Championship. It's up on the One Championship Twitter. So we're watching it. Obviously, one arm in, head in, but also leg in. I'm like,
oh yeah, and it's like that squeeze. He's squeezing with his arms.
Yeah,
it looks like
pulling the head down.
His arm on one side is kind of cutting off the airflow on one side, and the leg is normal. But yeah, you would think
the leg would give him space. Like that left leg is stuck in there in the triangle.
Yeah, it's just a strange one. It was definitely the squeeze that done it anyway. Like he was kind of pulling his head into the guy's own left arm there.
Do you know what? I don't think that's a triangle. I think that's like a Dick Plata or something. Like, I think he's like pulling him into his groin. Like, I genuinely think that's not a triangle, like, is it? Because
no, it doesn't look like one.
He's pulling I think it's like pulling the head down. I think it's like the esophagus or whatever actually getting pulled into your man's pelvis and the head being pulling him down that's choking him. Like, there's too much room there. He
used his cup smartly there. Yeah, it's a very peculiar one. And normally you don't think that one like that would kind of cause a submission, but yeah, it's definitely not. Yeah, what do you want to call it? The dick joke? Are we going to name it here now?
Cock joke. The cock joke. Yeah, and I think we will name it that. Right, quickly here now, because we've already done this on the Chase and Pack, but let's look ahead to PFL, the championship fight. This is. Are you doing a preview show this week? If we're doing a preview show, we should fucking do it for this, because this is fucking brilliant. I don't know, no, maybe not. I don't want to be making podcasts live on the fucking on the show or anything.
We'll see, we won't set anything in stone yet, but we'll talk after.
We'll talk about it. So many great fights. Kayla Harrison, Pacheco for the third time. Pacheco, the only person to go to the decision with Kayla Harrison twice. Can she do it for a third time and lose again? Is probably the biggest question here. With Brendan Loughnane against Bubba Jenkins for the 145-pound belt and the £1 million. Antti Deja at heavyweight against Matthias Scheffel. And that's for the £1 million as well. A non-championship fight, Julia Budd against Aspen Ladd, which is a great fight. Then for the tournament finale at lightweight, Stevie fucking Ray against Olivier Aubin-Mercier at 170. We've Daniela Taylor against Sadibou Sai, probably the fight that no one saw coming in that, especially Daniela Taylor, who's only had one fight to get there. Omari Akhmedov and Rob Wilkinson at 205, who've been stars of the PFL this year. And then we have a lot of undercard fights as well. We've Jeremy Stevens and Nathan Schultz, Shemin Rice against Marlon Rice after Shane Burgos fell out of that. We've Magomed Karibov taking on Gleison Tibau, Dakota Decheva, as well as on the card. So this is a phenomenal card, really. We're talking about the Chasing Pack, and there's probably not a better card that any promotion can put on than this, I would say. It's right up, maybe Bellator, maybe one championship to put all their best fighters on it. But this is basically what we have here. This is all the championship level fighters in PFL that have reached that level through winning fights this year, which is a very honourable meritocratical, I just made up a word there, way of getting there, but some cardian.
Unreal card. Look, we talked about lack of jeopardy in the UFC card earlier on. I think this card has all the jeopardy. It's taken all the jeopardy.
Millies all around the place.
Millies going all over the place. Little Wayne will be kind of throwing millies all over the place. A million
here, a million there. So go.
Yeah, brilliant. That's what, do you know what? PFL should use that. And maybe not even get Lil Wayne to do it. Just get you to come in and sing it.
I love
look,
that song.
Even if you don't know the fighters or you're not familiar with the fighters here, tune in. They're fighting for $1 million. You know what I mean? It's huge stakes and fighting for the chance. That's life-changing money. We're talking about fighters getting paid more, wanting to get paid more. Well, here they are. Let's support it. Now, I think the card overall is really good, and I think even the prelims have some interesting fights on as well. Obviously, Dakota Decheva is a really hot prospect coming from the UK and Ireland in the women's flyweight division. She's definitely one to look at. Magomed Karimov is fighting Gleison Tibau. Always in interesting fights. We have Nathan Schulte, who's former PFL champion in 2018, maybe 2019 as well, taking on Jeremy Stevens. The Battle of the Morizes, Shaman versus Marlon, who's making his PFL debut. It'll be interesting to see how Marlon bounces back after his retirement and getting knocked out.
It's a good fight for him to come back to, I suppose.
I was just going to say, a much better matchup than Shane Burgos would have been. And Omari Akhmedov and Rob Wilkinson, that opens up the card. Brilliant in the light heavyweight division, and all the way through is really good. Obviously, that extra interest we'll have in Stevie Ray and Brendan Loughnane. It's great to see them boys getting in and getting their opportunity and getting a crack at the belt and at the $1 million as well. And both of them have chances to win in those fights too.
Let's give our picks for the championship fights. Let's do it here. Kayla Harrison, Larissa Pacheco.
Harrison.
I'm going for a Harrison finish this time. I think she'll want to get the finish after the decision. Loughnane and Jenkins, we were talking about this the other day. Jenkins is the underdog here. And I was look, Brendan Loughnane was so good in his last fight, I can understand it in a way, but you know what? The betting makes me want to pick Jenkins. Like, it's almost like the heart and the head says Loughnane, almost. Very close fight. But the pocket might say Bubba Jenkins here. I'm really torn on this one. Really torn.
Absolutely, yeah. It's if you like betting on a live dog, definitely Bubba Jenkins is here. Look, he is what you could say on paper, the perfect style to beat someone like Brendan Loughnane, who's going to want to kind of just fight on the feet, get off his strikes there, and, you know, kind of sprawl and brawl per se, if you want to call it that. Jenkins has serious wrestling credentials. You know, he holds a win over Bo Nickel, I think, in wrestling. Obviously, it's different translating over to MMA, but look, he knows what he has to do. Brendan Loughnane knows what he has to do, and it's going to be, if the fight is going to be won and lost on where it's controlled, whether it be on the mat, whether it be on the feet. I think with Loughnane, he's going to probably be successful in the early stages with his takedown defense. Will Jenkins slowly but surely wear him down, and will it be enough to take the fight? I'm not sure. Gun to my head, I'm going to pick Loughnane to get the decision win.
I'll go with the same, because I picked an Irishman to win a PFL tournament this year, and he wears the Irish jersey, and I will argue that till death comes home with Graham on the first on the end of the year show, like we always do this year. And Brendan Loughnane has actually replied to a tweet of mine saying that it counts, so that's 100%. Come on, Brendan, let's do it. Dejan Sheffield, I think Dejan will win that. I think he's wrestling as well as he's striking's a bit too much, but we know after this year, never ruled out Matthias Sheffield. Fucking knocked out Bruno Capoloza, or beat Bruno Capoloza anyway. You going with Dejan that one?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Deja, but like you said, this been some turnaround, because me and you had a conversation when we first saw Sheffield fight.
I thought he was useless.
He was not good, and it looked like he was looking for a way out of the fight as well. But by goodness, he's turned it around, and he obviously, look, we're talking about heavyweights. He has a chance here to kind of clip Deja, but I think it's going to be Deja that'll get the win.
Yeah, I think this is these are 5 rounds, aren't they? Actually, that's interesting.
Yes. Yeah.
I think Olivier Aubin-Mercier is probably going to win a decision over Stevie Ray. I just like Aubin-Mercier is probably what the PFL don't want, in terms of, like, he's a bit boring but good at the same time. I can kind of see not having this fight is not as unbalanced in kind of stylistically as maybe Bubba Jenkins and Loughnane, but you would imagine, as you said, Olivier Aubin-Mercier is going to be looking to try and take down Stevie Ray, put him on his back and land damage, but that's not going to be easy to do either. Stevie Ray is very good at takedown defense. I think they match up quite evenly on the feet, and stylistically, I think I said on the chase and pack as well, they're very similar stylistically as well. It's just going to be who's going to want it more on the night, who's going to perform better on the night. That could be the difference maker in that fight. I'm going for Sadibou C, and I'm going for Rob Wilkinson to win. I know you're a fan of Taylor. You going for him? You going for C? And who you going for at 205?
Do you know, C and Taylor is close. Taylor has kind of swung in, won relatively easy against Rory McDonald, so
and that helps him, doesn't it?
Yeah, he's not that battle worn, and this is a real kind of a toss up. And I'm interested to see the betting. I'm not sure if you have the betting there, but if Taylor was an underdog here, I'd probably be throwing a few quid on him. But Sadibou Sy is dangerous, and he's dangerous throughout the fight. So, I mean, for freshness and for lack of damage taken in recent fights, I'd probably go with Daniel Taylor if he was a good price.
Very close in the betting. Plus 140 for Taylor. C is minus 160. So very close. C is just about the favourite.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, indeed. And 205 Omari Akhmedov or Wilkinson. I like Wilkinson in that one, I must say.
I do, yeah. I like Wilkinson, but these two can be just kind of thrown into madness in fights as well, so anything could happen. But Rob Wilkinson has been on a steady run of form, and I kind of fancy him for this one as well. I think Akhmedov is probably more well-rounded, a little bit better on the ground, but I'd say Rob Wilkinson will probably be able to fend off those takedowns and look for the knockout. It'll be interesting to see. That's a close one as well. Indeed,
100%. Right, we leave it there.
One more before we go. We've never mentioned it for Bellator. Nemkov versus Yoel Romero confirmed. Yeah. That's a great fight.
And they're doing Bader against Fader.
Bader.
Yeah. That CBS card is very interesting. Like, you see James Gallagher on Twitter today as well. They want me to fight in America. I wonder do they want him on that one. There's a lot. I don't know. This Irish Bellator card, as I'll be honest, it's kind of shit so far. I wonder they're just trying to stack the CBS card and actually like the Irish card. They're just thinking, sure, that'll sell out anyway. We'll put Peter Queally in there against fucking Ken Musa in the main event and it'll sell out. I don't know.
It's interesting to see. Yeah, it's so far there's a couple of fights to be matched up as well. A couple of interesting ones so far, but yeah, not really that one that's turning their head like a Yoel Romero kind of a fight or a meaningful main event, but look at plenty of time to make those announcements as well, so fingers crossed.
I just completely didn't answer your question as well. I like Nimkov and Romero is an interesting fight because Nimkov can fight the way he fought the last night against Romero, and look how good Romero looked in Ireland. Like, it was a fucking joy to watch him. I know he's fighting Manhoef and everything, but it's an interesting fight. Like, we saw Corey Anderson taking down Nimkov over and over in that first fight. His wrestling has obviously improved, but as well last night, my analysis there of that one was, or the last night, Nimkov got tired and Corey Anderson wasn't able to take advantage of it. Yoel Romero will be fucking still there in rounds 3, 4 and 5, still throwing, he's 2 shots around. He'll be there to take advantage of it if he gets too tired. So, Jesus. What
and he's going to stand, I think, to be honest, even at this stage of his career, that Yoel Romero is probably a better version of Corey Anderson in every kind of department. More power, strong in the wrestling. I don't know whether he probably doesn't have the gas tank maybe that Anderson had, but Anderson just was refusing.
He doesn't use his gas tank either, does he? Yoel, he kind of just stands there and waits.
Not really. No, not really. It's more of an explosive fighter, but it's like he would probably have to take a few lessons, saying that I feel that Anderson kind of left a little bit in there where he just had no answers to any of Nemcov's questions. But it'll be interesting to see. Yoel Romero is notorious. It could be in a barn burner, could be in a stink fest. It'll be interesting to see what he does against Nemkov. Hopefully he comes into it, Romero's a chance to win a world title, and it's probably his last chance to win a world title. Hopefully he comes in and throws caution to the wind and we see an absolute crazy fight.
Do you give Fedor any chance against Ryan Bader? He got knocked out fairly quickly in the first one.
Yeah, he's going to get knocked out again, I'd say.
He is. There's no saving grace really. The only saving grace I would say for anyone fighting Bader is he looked terrible at 205 recently. Like, if he can bring that form up to heavyweight, maybe, but he's been fighting well at heavyweight. So, like, I remember saying recently, all his family should be feeding him fucking Big Macs, trying to keep him at heavyweight because he looks so slow at light heavyweight. But
it's a strange one for Bellator as well, because look, if Bader wins, it's all well and good. Fedor wins, he's going to retire, and the belt is left in limbo somewhat as well. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see.
They're probably happy to get it off Bader, to be honest. Like, it is.
Yeah. But maybe we might see Nemkov go up and challenge for the heavyweight title next year or something like that. That would be quite interesting if he got past Yoel Romero.
That heavyweight division is so light as well. Like, your man Steve Mowry, he's going to be that was actually no contest in his last fight, wasn't it? I think he'll be fighting for it soon, and I think he'll beat Bader. I think he's really good, but we'll wait and see on that. I actually just saw as well, I opened up a website, an unnamed MMA website there, and apparently Dustin Poirier is like completely cooled on fighting Beneil Dariush, so I'm like, fuck's sake. The one I like this lightweight division, these bunch of fucking prima donna pricks at the top of that division. They'll only, like, Gaethje, Chandler and Poirier might as well just keep fighting each other over and over and over. Let the rest of the people fight for the title. Just fuck off and have your stupid prima donna shit not fighting anyone at the top of that division. It really irks me. You're holding up the division, you're fucking it up for everyone else. Just piss off. Piss off to fucking Bellator or something, lads. Go away.
That's it. Well said. Justice
for Binny. We leave it there. Thanks everyone for listening. Ian, do you have an inspirational quote for the week? Go on, make one up there. Give it to us.
It's either die a dog or shit the license.
We'll see you next week.